As I drove on the highway, I moved slowly and looked into each car that passed by. Although there was less traffic than expected, the roads were far from deserted. Several ambulances and police cars passed by my window. Every driver I saw was noticeably underweight, with tired eyes facing the road and hands limply gripping the steering wheel. Every driver except one, a man driving a Porsche. He was thin, but looked relatively healthy. The billboards I passed were somehow even stranger. One featured a morbidly obese woman. Rolls of fat hanging from her belly seemed to engulf her as she lay by the beach wearing a thong and a tiny bikini top. She was so obese that I wondered if they used Photoshop. In her hand was a loaf of bread. Underneath her, the text read, "Get fat fast with Molly's Loaves." Another billboard showed a chubby man proposing to an obese woman, and on another, a fat young child was playing checkers with a similarly chubby old man. Each ad was the same. Regardless of what they were selling, the models were consistently overweight. I had never seen these advertisements before, despite having driven on this road countless times. After exiting the highway, I drove through the downtown area of my neighborhood. Restaurants that once served hundreds were rather empty or transformed into junk stores. Everyone walking the sidewalks was so thin that they had to stop every few steps to steady themselves. I saw an older woman fall. A group of teenagers stepped over her without pausing their animated conversation. Most of the adults, however, looked around as they talked. They didn't make small talk, though. They just hurried as fast as their weak legs could carry them. I drove by my town's most popular grocery store. There were numerous parked cars in the parking lot and on the surrounding streets, many of which were parked illegally. I was reminded of Black Friday, but worse. The line of people waited in front of the store, trailing through the parking lot and onto the surrounding sidewalk. There were several accidents on the road, and I found myself in stop-and-go traffic for a few blocks before the crowds thinned into an eerie emptiness. My apartment building looked the same, at least. I parked and headed towards the entrance. I walked up the stairs and shuffled through my purse until I found the keys. Then I unlocked the door and stepped inside. My apartment was the same as I had left it. Sparse furniture, minimal decorations, a small flat-screen TV, and some clothes were strewn haphazardly on the floor. I was relieved by the familiarity, and as I settled down on the couch, I could have fallen asleep until I remembered. I still had to make dinner for me and Vernon. In my fridge, there is one half-empty bottle of milk and a large bowl of grapes. Some of the grapes had no protective skin, as if someone had peeled it off. I tried the freezer, empty. The cabinets contained several boxes of cereal. It goes without saying, this is not the kitchen I left this morning. Feeling defeated, I ate a handful of grapes and decided I'd make us some cereal when Vernon got home. Although I was starving, I didn't want to waste my daily calorie allowance. I sat by the TV. I read accounts of people misremembering things and waking up in the wrong places. They would spend days, months, or even years in complete confusion. Thankfully, those were old stories, and now we have the internet. I searched for food shortages. Hundreds of articles came up, many of which were discussing particular details. Some families are resorting to eating their elderly relatives. Articles advising people to stay home after dark to avoid hungry street gangs. An opinion piece on a new movie that the author referred to as trite food porn. I searched for food shortages on Wikipedia. The first result was titled, "The Contamination of 1999, the year I was born." I read, captivated by the words. Apparently, in the fall of 1999, the vast majority of the world's food had become contaminated by an invisible and almost omnipresent virus. Millions of pounds of seemingly perfectly good meals, vegetables, fruits, and flowers were causing the world's population to flock to hospitals. Although most survived, they were bedbound for several days and then unable to eat anything. As soon as they were well enough that they could eat, if they ate more contaminated food, they'd be sick again. Scientists had yet to discover a vaccine, and there was no natural immunization. As a result, all items sold in stores had to be verified as virus-free, a practice that continued into the 2020s. The latest estimates suggested that only 6% of our food is viable. I turned off my phone, downed 3 cups of water, and busied myself with household chores. What else could I do? Either I had severe memory loss, the strongest possibility, or somehow I had been transported. My heart shook beneath my ribcage, and the small amount of food in my belly shook like an internal tsunami. About an hour later, I heard the door unlock and rushed to greet my boyfriend. Except he wasn't my boyfriend. Not exactly. Years of poor nutrition had obviously prevented him from reaching his full potential. and he stood a few inches shorter than the person I'd seen this morning. He looked about 10 years older, and had already lost most of his hair. The strands that remained were a light shade of gray. He stood, hunched over, and balanced himself on our dining room table. When his eyes met mine, they were bloodshot. I knew he'd be skinnier. I didn't expect him to be so old. "Are you one of Alice's friends?" he asked, staring at me inquisitively. "I'm Vernon, the boyfriend. Where is she right now, anyway? She was supposed to have dinner with me tonight. Guess she forgot it was a one-on-one thing, huh?" Vernon, I hesitated and thought through my options. I walked closer so my face was more visible. I expected to see some recognition in his eyes, but he stared at me blankly. How could he sleep beside me for 2 years and not recognize me? Maybe the person he slept beside was so deformed by a lifetime of starvation, and yet I recognized him instantly. "You really don't recognize me, do you?" I stepped even closer until we were standing only a few feet apart. By now, his expression had devolved from mild curiosity to paranoid suspicion. He backed away slowly. "Holy shit. You look just like Alice. Are you guys related?" "Alice!" he called into an otherwise empty apartment. When he heard no response, he began sidestepping to the cutlery drawer. "Vernon, please, I don't know how to explain, but..." His hand reached into the knife drawer while still smiling at me in a way that may have seemed polite to a stranger, but I could tell it was obviously forced. "You know where Alice is, do you?" he asked. "I think she's having cramps in the bathroom. I haven't seen her," I said. "She invited me here for supper. We were friends back in high school, and I was in the neighborhood. If she has cramps, you should probably go. Besides, she didn't tell me you'd be here," he added. I got the hint. Would he believe me if I told the truth? No, he was always so practical. For my own safety and sanity, I need to get out of there. "Okay, tell Alice I said goodbye. I don't want to bother her." I turned around and headed straight to the door. I didn't even hear him behind me. He was so light. It felt as if he floated towards me. All I knew was the sudden sensation of his arm wrapped around my neck. His other arm pressed against the back of my head, tightening the choke. Thankfully, my chin was positioned slightly downward, so much of the weight of his forearm rested slightly below my mouth. Still, he could have easily yanked my head back if he wanted to, applying his full strength to my neck. "Why the fuck do you have Alice's purse?" Vernon whispered. Spit dribbled from his open mouth into my forehead. I didn't think Vernon would kill, not even in this world, but I was scared of what could happen accidentally. A few months ago, I watched a woman's self-defense video on how to escape a situation like this. The comments of the video were mixed. Some said it would work, and others said it would just piss off your attacker. But I had no other option. I pulled out my lighter from my purse and quickly lit on his arm. If he'd been tougher, filled with more adrenaline, maybe he would have let go. Maybe we both would have burst into flames. But I knew my boyfriend, and I knew he was capable of handling. Immediately, he shrieked and backed away from me. I didn't wait for him to calm down. I ran faster than I'd ever run before, even though I was dizzy. Even though I was terrified. I ran down the stairs, slammed the apartment door closed, and hopped into my car. After one quick look, I drove far faster than the speed limit. My phone rang. Vernon. It rang again, accompanied by a text message. I turned off the ringer and pulled over into a nearby parking lot. "There's some fat girl in our apartment, Alice. Where the fuck are you?" "I'm staying at my parents' for a few nights," I texted back. "Family emergency. The girl was an old friend, just a little weird. I told her to grab my purse for me when I leave. She must not have realized I left. Please leave me alone. I'll be back soon. I promise." "Do whatever you want. Just text me beforehand next time. Got really bad vibes. Thought I was going to have to kill her. Hope your family's okay." I sent a kissy face as a reply and drove a few blocks until I was sufficiently far away from the apartment complex. Then I began to scroll through my phone. Pictures of my boyfriend and me littered my camera roll. Of course, the me that existed on the screen was much thinner, several pounds below my goal weight even. But she still looked like me. Same height, same features, even her hair was the same. Again, I felt anger and intense sadness. How could Vernon not recognize me? How could he kick me out like that? I had to accept that this was not my world. Clearly the me who was in the pictures was gone, and I had to replace her. I have to forget about the old world and focus on how things worked here. I wiped the tears that had begun to form and thought over my options. I could go to a hotel, but I only had a couple of $100 or so on me, and my credit card remained buried in my underwear drawer. Most banks were closed, so I'd have to wait until tomorrow to withdraw money. Also, somehow the idea of sleeping amongst rooms and rooms of strangers seemed less appealing after my run-in with Vernon. If he was capable of murdering a woman who, despite being several pounds heavier, posed no apparent threat, what were others capable of? As much as I hate to admit it, it would probably be in my best interest to stay with my parents. I scrolled through my contacts but couldn't find my dad. Thankfully, I remembered his number. When I called, a stranger picked up. Fuck, I thought. I'll have to call my mom. My parents and I haven't spoken in about 3 months. Enough time for me to gain a decent amount of weight without them becoming suspicious. Also, I miss my father, and despite the years of constant disrespect, I miss my mother. It'll feel more comforting to stay with them. My mom picked me up.
Hello? Alice? Hi, Mom. Sorry for not calling. I know it's been a while. I've been missing you.
I tried to keep my voice steady.
Been a while? It's been almost 2 years. What kind of bullshit is that?
2 years. I have been a persona non grata to them for 2 years. But why? In reality, until recently, I tried to see them at least once a month. Three months was the longest I've been without contact.
I'm sorry. Everything's just been crazy recently, and I'm so sorry.
I was crying now, but I wasn't sure if I was out of guilt or desperation. I need someone to help me, someone like my father.
I don't know what you want from me.
My mom said. She sounded annoyed.
I need a place to stay for a few nights.
I admitted.
Vernon and I had a... Doesn't matter. I really need somewhere to stay. Alice, I can barely afford to feed myself. Now is not a really good time. Look, I have to go. Wait, Mom, I'll pay rent and everything, I promise.
An awkward silence followed, but she wasn't hanging up. Since I turned 18, she has insisted that I support myself financially. We weren't necessarily poor, but she insisted on living above her means. Designer dresses, fancy cruises, and a private cook for special occasions. I knew money was tight, and I heard my parents fighting about it constantly.
Fine. If you can pay for your own room and food, fine. Since we haven't spoken, I assume you need a new address. I'll text it to you later. Mom?
I said.
Can I talk to Dad? What did you say? Talk to who? I said...
I paused, and then I remembered how his contact wasn't on my phone. How my mom had said she didn't have enough food to feed herself without mentioning my dad. I remember my dad, standing at 6'7", devouring a slice of pizza like they're potato chips, constantly hungry. It didn't take long for me to put two and two together.
I said I'll talk to you later. Goodbye. Alice.
I hung up, half expecting my mom to call back, but she didn't. My crying had devolved into blubbering as I thought of my father, the man who read books with me in elementary school, introduced me to 80s movies and old school games, the man who protected me from my mother's tirades. That man was gone. Or maybe these memories and that man never even existed. Who knew how long I got to spend with him and what he was like? Consistently pushed to the brink of death and then succumbing to it. Still, it hurt too much to contain. About 10 minutes later, towards the end of my crying fit, my mom sent me the address. I plugged it into my phone. It was about 2 hours away. My stomach reminded me of its hunger, a deep pulsating emptiness expanding from within me. For better or worse, I need to eat now. I didn't want to deal with the chaos of the supermarket, and so instead I stopped at a nearby gas station store, making sure to fill up my car as well. The door to the store was locked, and I had to bang on it several times before the cashier let me in. He then immediately locked it behind me. Inside the store were the usual sights, the bright fluorescent lights, the freezer filled with drinks, rows of shitty junk food. I smiled politely at the cashier and thanked him for opening the door. He was a young guy around my age who looked surprisingly healthy. Skinny, of course, but healthy. Truthfully, I envied his slender physique, yet healthy skin and gorgeous long black hair. He was flipping through a magazine and barely acknowledged my existence, which of course made him more attractive. Not that I could focus on anything but food. I scanned through the aisles quickly, hoping to locate the healthiest item. I didn't even notice the prices until I picked up a granola bar, looked at the ingredients, and put it back. That one bar was nearly $200. The candy next to it was about $300. Desperately, I began running through the store, looking at every price. $400 for a bag of chips, $700 for thinly sliced bread, $250 for a half-rotten apple. I ran out of breath and strength and collapsed against the freezer. Again, I was crying. I was too weak to even think of a plan. I wish I had lunch earlier, or even just stuffed myself with cereal back to the apartment, or better yet, had the foresight to grab my credit card. I tried to calm myself down. Maybe the store took Apple Pay? You alright? I looked up to see the cashier crouched a few feet away from me. The look of indifference he held earlier had softened to a kind smile. I'm so sorry, I said, immediately wiping my eyes on my sleeve. I just can't. I'm just so hungry. I'm sorry about the scene. I added lamely. Then I laughed. I probably look like a crazy person. It's alright. I understand, he said, handing me a tissue and holding up his arm, which was wrapped several times over in bandages. You're actually one of our saner customers. Some dude today literally tried to eat me when I couldn't take a year-old expired coupon. I laughed again. Must be terrible working here. I do my best, he shrugged, and his smile turned to a smirk. I get some of your type too. Let me guess, parents cut you off and you're finally learning what it's like for the rest of us. Sort of. At this point, I was used to people assuming I came from money. In their eyes, it was apparent. How else could a young person afford to look so well-fed? I really don't know what to do about food now. It's tough. He looked away for a second. When he made eye contact again, his gaze seemed intense. Have you ever been to a feeding arena? No. I didn't add that I had no idea what a feeding arena was, since I suspected not knowing about it would draw suspicion from the first person who actually wanted to help me. There are crumbs all over the place. Sometimes I go there just to pick up the scraps. And honestly, a girl like you, they probably give you some free food anyway. I guess I could go, I said. I still had no idea what a feeding arena was, but the free food did sound nice. There's one going on just a few blocks from here. I think it's ending at 6:30, I think. Entry fee isn't terrible, just $20. And of course you need to bring a little offering. He fiddled with something in his pocket for a few seconds, then handed me a wrapped stick of gum. Lately, they've been accepting gum. Thank you. I really appreciate everything. What's the name of Artie's All-American Arena, he said, chuckling. It's only a 3-minute drive. Okay. I stood up. My body was awkwardly swaying from exhaustion and hunger. The cashier, whose name tag I noticed said Lewis, helped me balance myself. Thank you so much, Lewis. You're the kindest person I've talked to today. He laughed and opened up the fridge behind me, fishing out a bottle of water. It was the only item in the refrigerator that was reasonably priced. On the house, he told me, and I drank as much as I could before heading out of the store. Lewis locked the door behind me. After getting into my car, I looked back towards the door. He was standing there, watching. The friendly smile had faded. When he saw that I had seen him, it returned, and he waved. I drove off with a sour taste in my mouth.